Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the MZM Masterclass podcast. Today, I am joined by Mr. Andrew Moffatt, CEO and co-founder of Curious Insight. In this episode, Mr. Moffatt and I will be covering all the basics about consumer insights that small business owners need to know to begin understanding their target audience. Would you like to introduce yourself for everyone?
Sure. Thanks, Rocky, for having me on. So as Rocky said, I'm the CEO of Curious Insight. Been running my own company, I guess, for the past 3.5 years. And before that, spent almost 20 years at what's now one of the largest kind of data collection firms and research in the world. It's called Dynata, formerly SSI, based in Connecticut, close to where you are.
Yep. So I guess let's talk about how you got to where you are today with Curious Insight. When did you guys start? When did you start growing, and where are you right now?
Yeah, so we, as I mentioned, we started 3.5 years ago, and I started it with a couple of folks that had worked with me in the previous company for over 10 years,
Wow.
And when we were there, we did a lot of work globally, helping companies like Nielsen, who most companies are familiar with. They do a lot of media ratings and tell people what people watch on TV and things like that. So I had my job was to actually manage them as a client all over the world. So I got to learn how the largest research firm in the whole world kind of operates and what makes them great. So that's where a lot of our learnings for what we're doing today actually came from.
So what does Curious Insight specialize in specifically? Like, what are your guys' main offerings, and why?
Yeah.
And why do you do what you do?
Yeah, so today we focus on behavioral insights and behavioral research, and what that means specifically, and I guess why it's different from most stuff that's out there, is it's only on collecting people's behaviors passively on their phones and on their desktops and things like that. So rather than, say, developing a survey and asking people questions and hopefully they tell you the truth, or they remember what they did, instead we've kind of reframed how, I won't even say surveys, but say research in general should be done by being able to track a large audience of people passively and be able to see things like what apps they're using and what websites they're going to and what they're searching for on their devices, or what they're shopping for on Amazon, what they're watching on Netflix, or what ads they actually click on and enjoy and end up engaging with. And so it kind of moves away from this question-based model where you're asking people to join a panel to take lots of questions and tell you more about who they are, so companies can create better products or evolve products better, to just observing people and then engaging with them if you see interesting behavior. So, rather than asking someone, hey, how many times you used Instagram last week, you'll know exactly how many times and how many hours, and you can ask them, hey, why did you use Instagram more than TikTok? Because you know more about what they're up to.
Yeah, so why is it crucial for small businesses in particular to understand consumer behavior? And where does all of these behavioral insights that you just mentioned come into play when you're thinking about impacting marketing outcomes?
Yeah, so for small businesses, we can help them see what's trending. We can help them see what's happening within their category or within their market at scale, especially with what the market leaders are doing and what's selling potentially, or what advertising or what messaging or what offers are appealing to people real time, versus having to go out and build out a list of people and try to find the right people to talk to. It's a more simplified way of just getting to the insights and audience that you're looking to get, and where from a marketing perspective, we have some really unique offerings because we can see things like any ad that you saw on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, or probably not on Facebook, or a Snapchat or somewhere like that, and see if you actually go and engage with that brand after you see that ad, and if you did engage with that ad, what was the caption? What were they kind of putting in front of you? And the beauty of behavioral is that that data is being collected all the time. It's available real time versus having to think of what to do and then go out and again find that audience and do some research with them. But in this case, that people saw an ad, exactly what they're doing, and this kind of visibility into marketing is different because it opens the eyes not just to what you're doing, but you actually get to see what your competitors are doing and see where they're spending their money, what social platforms they're actually advertising on, or where they're spending their ad dollars at the end of the day.
And you're also seeing what the customer sees, right? And what they're engaging with and what's working well, so you can optimize your campaigns that way. So are you guys
exactly so like you can show from an omni-channel perspective as well and see, hey, they saw an ad on TikTok, but then they showed up at a McDonald's because they saw an ad on TikTok, and you can start attributing kind of advertising actions to outcomes in much kind of deeper ways.
Yeah. So are you guys currently working with any small businesses at Curious Insight? And if so, like, how are they using your offerings, and what kind of success have they had so far, I guess?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of smaller research agencies for sure. So in that case, what we're bringing to them is the ability to find audiences a lot easier. So if you think about that example, right? So you want to find someone who shops for, shampoo, right? We can actually go find those people, identify them. And I think that's one part of the equation. It's like making a more kind of like a better match between the user and, say, a survey, because you can hyper target them that much better. But the products that we've created connecting to surveys are what's changed things. So we can now append behavioral data to a data set so that you can take a survey and then create a media plan from the outcome of that survey, because the media habits of that set of users that like your product, or you can start to learn like hobbies and interests that we derive from people's behaviors or their news consumption or whatever might be of interest to you. So helps you more in terms of like how you acquire the audience, who is this audience, how should you be messaging them, where should you be reaching them, and the behaviors of people illuminate kind of all those journeys for you.
So you've already kind of touched on this, but how would you say that small business owners could begin to implement this behavioral targeting into their own businesses? Is there any way for them to do it themselves, or would it be best for them to work with a firm like yours?
Well, so you can collect behavioral data on your own people. There are tools out there to, collect clickstream data if you have a website, or to give you your own information on your customers. It's really just understanding that journey a little bit more. We do have the ability in a couple of ways to help people create this data for themselves. If you have a mobile app, we have an SDK or piece of technology that you could put into your app that would actually start collecting this data on your people. So in that sense, you would know everything that's happening within your app, and our technology would allow you to see everything that's happening outside of your app. So we would track every other app interaction, every other website visit, every other search, or other behaviors that you might want to see. We can enable that for anyone who's an app owner. Or if you have an audience that you want to create, we have white label apps. We can help people kind of curate and build audiences, be it behavioral or not.
So finally, I wanted to touch on how small business owners can measure the impact of these different behavioral insights in their overall successes. So, what tools and techniques can they use to measure the impact, I guess, of these marketing strategies that are driven by these behavioral insights?
Yeah, so it's kind of back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of like seeing an ad and then seeing the outcome of that ad, right? So, so we're doing some of that today just through just advertising effectiveness. How many times do you need to expose someone to an ad? What are your competitors doing in that sense? But we're also looking at kind of newer creative ways to see other communication points from a brand. So things like notifications on your phone, like are they driving behaviors in different ways? Or email communication, being able to see a brand emailing you, and then are you then looking at like clicking and going to that brand's website? And so it's trying to find, I think there's two parts, like what are the ways that brands or small business owners are trying to communicate with their actual audience, right? Whether it's through push notifications, whether it's through ads, whether it's through email notifications or whatever that is. And then how do you kind of measure success by just engaging with your category, engaging with your product, or engaging with your brand post exposure, and being able to measure that passively is what we offer, which is kind of neat.
So essentially you take a look at all the different touch points, am I getting that correct, that a brand or a business has with their consumer, and then how that ends up turning into conversions?
Exactly. Okay. And so we're building out both sides of that right now, right? So one side is right now we have kind of all of your ad exposure. As I said, we're testing out other things like notifications or things like that, right? That are other ways in which you try to communicate with that user. And then the outcomes are today, did you buy? Did you engage? Did you use the app? Did you show up in person? But we're looking into other things like, if you connect accounts, then you get like historical information on people. You start to know more about things, right? And so that gives you more outcome data, right, that you can start to measure against. And so I think it's an always evolving kind of area. But I think today the whole idea is that all of our measurement is done without asking questions of people. Definitely. And it's all done in a way that doesn't require any cookies. Yeah. So we're doing this, we're seeing the ads, we're measuring impact, and we're doing that without any cookies being around at all, which is important given where the world of marketing is going.
It's very precise, but it's very unobtrusive, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
So finally, can you discuss some examples? I guess you already touched on in the past, but some examples of successful and unsuccessful applications of these behavioral insights?
So maybe start with the unsuccessful. Like sometimes it's hard, especially if it's small business, because you might not have a large enough audience that engages with that we can track, right? So often for small business owners, looking at maybe the largest competitors in that space, or maybe the category at large might be a better view than say that brand if it's not that big. So because we track 100,000 people in the United States today, so by the time you get to maybe a smaller brand, that becomes hard. But we can certainly like see things as they're happening, and we can see organically things growing. So things like one example would be like we did some research on like new Samsung devices as they're coming out, right? And so being able to see the device passively, seeing people converting over, then being able to measure back and see where people came from, what device they moved from, and things like that. That's all like really cool kind of use cases of what we'd be able to do in that sense. So.
Great. So that's going to be it for us today. Thank you, Mr. Moffatt, for joining me on today's episode. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you guys like to learn more about him and his work, I'll put some links in the description. Is that okay? Yeah. I'll put some links in the description so you guys can check him out. And I'll see you guys all in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.